Imagine the sun beating down mercilessly, turning the cracked earth into a blistering expanse of hopelessness. Each step sinks into parched soil, a relentless reminder of the 3 desperate days without water. The air is thick with the acrid scent of dust, and the weight of unbearable silence presses heavily on your chest as the distant mountains stand sentinel, offering no refuge from the unforgiving desert. Tonight, we are looking at a story of human resilience and despair, a tale echoing through the harsh landscapes of Death Valley during the fateful winter of 1849. Here, a group of weary pioneers, known as the 49ers, became entrapped in a merciless land, their dreams of fortune spiraling into a nightmare of survival against the most insurmountable odds. Drawn westward by the promise of gold and prosperity, they faced a turn of fate that would force them to confront not only the barren wasteland around them, but their own humanity as desperation clawed at their souls. The stakes were grim. As they journeyed deeper into the valley's sweltering maw, hunger gnawed at their bellies, and parched throats cried out for relief. With every passing day, the atmosphere thickened with the weight of retreating hopes. Men like William Lewis Manley and John Rogers, who had once envisioned a bright future filled with gold, now found themselves teetering on the brink of despair. The relentless heat and suffocating dust, a suffocating chorus, reminding them of the gravity of their situation. With dwindling supplies and a landscape that seemed to conspire against them, their plight is a visceral tableau of survival, stripped bare of any illusion. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of blood-red desperation, shadows deepened, and the chilling reality of their choices began to settle in. Choices steeped in fear, sacrifice, and the gnawing instinct to survive at any cost. It is here, in this desolate expanse, that the 49ers will face their darkest hour, a moment where hope becomes a fading whisper, and the echoes of their journey will be remembered for ages. This is the harrowing tale of the Death Valley 49ers, stranded in the desert. Chapter 1. The Great Migration Begins. The spring of 1849 awakens the restless spirit of thousands. Gold glimmers in the minds of hopeful pioneers, drawing them towards California. An elusive promise of fortune sends these dreamers on a journey fraught with uncertainty. The wagons stretch for miles along the overland trails, a serpentine column of human ambition moving westward. Every axle creaks under the weight of dreams and supplies. Among them are William Lewis Manley and John Rogers. They join others from various walks of life, farmers, merchants, and tradesmen, all tangled within this single-minded pursuit. The pastel sky drowns in dust and sweat as the group ambles forward, eager to escape their pasts. Yet ahead lies an unforgiving expanse. The Feather River Valley offers little comfort. Manley peers into the flickering sunset, hearts heavy with anticipation and fatigue. They hear tales of a shortcut, the Hastings Cutoff, boasting a quicker passage through the Sierra Nevada. Hope wrestles with skepticism. Will this be the pathway to riches, or a descent into despair? The golden dust clings to their lungs, but the desert sings a seductive song. This way, it seems to whisper. Most of the travelers cling to the well-traveled trails, yet a few, tempted by visions of speed, veer into the unknown. Shadows conjoin in the twilight. Laughter mingles with the soft cries of children. Yet the desert watches, preparing to show just how merciless it can be. Days blend into one another, each coated in unrelenting heat and the piercing chirps of crickets. Manley feels the oppressive weight of the sun, its blazing rays turning smiles into grimaces. Skin blisters under the relentless sun, fire trails along weary bodies. Families construct makeshift shelters of canvas and brush, searching for solace in the stifling heat. The air reeks of sweat, leather, and despair. Manley and Rogers march onward, bolstered by camaraderie. Each step takes their feet deeper into the narrative of human endurance. They spare glances at one another, silent acknowledgments of shared burdens. Here, camaraderie pulses, as strong as the fatigue that drapes over their shoulders like a heavy cloak. But the landscape shifts with each long hour. What was once rolling hills now becomes an endless stretch of desolate terrain. As they cross into the arid threshold of Death Valley, the temperature spikes. It lunges at them with a ferocity that takes breath away. They falter, lungs abandoned to the searing heat. The dust devils swirl around them, mocking their panting breaths, twisting reality under the relentless sun. "Are we lost?" Roger questions, more to himself than Manly, his voice a strained echo against the endless sands. The words hang heavy, caught in the thrum of the oppressive air. They navigate forward, fueled by sheer willpower, one foot in front of the other. Each night, hope momentarily flickers back to life under a vast star-filled sky. The chill of the desert night momentarily deceives them, a short respite from the day's torment. Manly gazes up at the shimmering constellations that seem eternally out of reach. He tries to ignore the gnawing hunger, the aching thirst, but it gnaws at the edges of his resolve. The sound of trickling water fills his mind, taunting yet unyielding. But dawn returns, bringing an unyielding sun, and though the stars fade, shadows deepen. The desert, with its shifting sands, transforms from an enchanting landscape to a wide expanse of despair. Each footstep leaves a mark, but the sand quickly erases their presence, absorbing their hopes and dreams back into the earth. Days wear on, relentless and suffocating. Water supplies dwindle. The men scrounge for survival, searching for water where none exists. The harsh reality of their venture settles like a shroud around them. They calculate each movement. Every drink of water must be monitored, rationed like the dreams they clung to so dearly. Parched lips crack. Thirst pangs ignite into a feral desperation. Anything resembling sustenance seems a far-off memory. Rodents scurry into crevices, but they are a flicker on the horizon of despair. Manly feels uncertainty claw at the walls of his mind. Much like their rapidly vanishing water, courage seems to evaporate in the heat. They encounter the skeletal remains of the landscape. Snakes slip through the shadows of rotting cacti, the remnants of other souls lost to the consuming void. The air reeks of decay. Desperation lurks behind every survival instinct. A low murmur of realization begins to wash over the crew. They are not just pioneers. They are intruders in an unforgiving land. Every hour spent trudging forward is an hour the desert swallows whole. Slowly, nightmares twine themselves into the fabric of their thoughts. Each night, fear stakes a claim on dreams turned to dust. On the 47th day, they reach an aggressive elevation. Manly surveys the landscape, eyes narrowing at the vast, barren space ahead. The valley stretches to the horizon, infinite yet palpably claustrophobic. Water mirages taunt them in the distance. Is it worth it to push onward? Will tomorrow bring relief? Death Valley, Manly mutters, his voice barely rising above the wind. The name itself sends a shiver down their collective spine. What lay ahead were no mere hazards of nature. They faced starvation, dehydration, and fractured bonds of survival. The monument of stone before them demands respect, but respect alone won't quench their thirst. As scents of rotting plants and the sharp scent of sagebrush blend into the air, the crew contemplates their next steps. Hope is a dwindling flicker. The landscape has shifted from one of potential to one of menace. They are a heartbeat away from giving in to despair. Yet, amidst the suffocating atmosphere, a solitary question emerges. How far can a human spirit wander before it breaks? The desert watches. It knows the answer. Before we descend further into the dark, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You won't want to face the rest of this journey alone. And before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Knowing you are out there, somewhere in the dark, makes this history feel all the more alive. Chapter 2, The Fateful Decision. The horizon shimmers like a mirage, the blue sky merging with the land in a cruel illusion. It's late autumn in 1849, and a desperate group of travelers stands on the precipice of one of the harshest landscapes in North America. The sun beats down relentlessly, baking the earth beneath their feet. The scent of dry sagebrush fills the air, mingling with sweat and fear. These are the 49ers. They are gold seekers, driven by dreams and delusions. Their hopes shimmer as brightly as the dust kicked up by their worn boots, but now they face a stark choice: to take the well-trodden path or gamble on an uncharted route. Behind them lies the Sierra Nevada, ahead the promise of riches in California. But first they must navigate Death Valley. Philip Manley and William Rogers stand at the forefront. The weight of leadership presses hard upon their shoulders. Observing the weary faces of their party, they exchange unspoken glances, each contemplating the enormity of their decision. The crew huddles together, murmurs of doubt rippling through them like a breeze stirring dry grass. They know they have limited supplies. Food is dwindling and hope is fading. Rogers's mind races. He remembers the elders warning him of the desert's treachery. Manley seems resolute, leaning toward adventure. "We can cut through," he insists, the promise of quicker passage glimmering in his eyes. It feels brash, even reckless. Each man is torn, wrestling with the terrifying unknown. The air is heavy with anticipation as they weigh the decision. Muscles tense. The heat curls like fingers around their throats. Rogers can feel the sun baking the back of his neck. He thinks of water. Their skin crawls with the impending urgency of thirst. Each glance at the cracked earth reminds them just how unforgiving the land can be. The choice is made. An uneasy consensus emerges, fragile hope laced with trepidation. And so they set forth, a ragtag band of gold seekers, each step taking them further from the known world. Behind them, the canyon walls echo a warning. A silence falls, punctuated only by the crunch of boots on the stony ground. The arid air prickles with tension, broken only by the occasional snap of twigs and the distant scurry of unseen creatures. Few dare to speak. A heavy weight hangs over them, each breathing in sync with nature's oppressive rhythm. A day passes, the sun climbs, higher, and the temperature soars. Sweat glistens, turning dirt into mud on their skin. They pass jagged rock formations that tower like sentinels. The shadows they cast provide little reprieve. Muscles ache. Complaints bubble just beneath the surface, desperate to be voiced. At midday, the heat becomes unbearable. The sun reaches its zenith, punishing and relentless, making their skin prick with heat blisters. Water is rationed. Canteens are clutched like lifelines. A few men grumble, questioning the wisdom of their leaders, but fear holds their tongues. No one dares to voice dissent, yet. Up ahead, a dry wash stretches like a desperate invitation. They press on, the parched land sucking the energy from their bones. They step into the ravine, relief coursing through them as they find a momentary respite from the punishing sun. Yet the respite is short-lived. The walls of rock loom like prison bars, closing in on them. The days blur into a hellscape of dust and rock. With each passing hour, their provisions dwindle. The men clutch their canteens tight, licking the last drops of water with parched tongues. The sand begins to seep into their boots, gritty and irritating, a constant reminder of their dire situation. At night, the temperatures drop sharply. The harsh chill bites through their threadbare clothing. Men huddle together around small fires, smiles only a memory, replaced by the somber reality of their plight. The sky overhead is a sea of stars, indifferent to their struggles, cold and distant. Sleep comes in fits, interrupted by the gnawing hunger in their bellies and the gnawing fear in their hearts. The landscape shifts, growing more surreal and threatening. Shadows lengthen as the sun falls, stretching like fingers reaching hungrily toward the retreating light. The men feel the oppressive weight of the vast emptiness surrounding them. Whispers fill the air, not just amongst each other, but in their minds. Insecurities taking root. Where are they headed? What lies ahead? A few days in, a sense of denial begins to take shape. Perhaps they've gone too far to turn back. Perhaps they will find an oasis just over the next ridge. Philip tries to maintain spirits, but his heart sinks with every weary step. The horizon that promised riches now appears mocking, shifting. Rumours wander among the crew, tales of those who disappeared in Death Valley, never to be seen again. The heat grows more intense, relentless in its grip. The sun's rays slice down with a precision that makes their skin raw. They encounter an expanse of salt flats, a cruel glisten that reflects the light blindingly. Every footfall feels heavier. The ground almost seems to pull them under. Manly tries to push forward, but fatigue weighs on them all, turning dreams into nightmares. Then, a fateful moment. A man stumbles, falling to the ground. A shout breaks the monotonous heat. The sound ripples through the group, jolting them from their trance-like state. They circle around him. It is uncertain. His skin is slick with sweat. Fever burns in his eyes. "Get water," someone cries, but the urgency twists in the oppressive air. They have little to spare, and they've ventured too far into the desolate depths of the valley for their own good. The tension among them snaps as whispered fears erupt. Each man is ego-bound, struggling to maintain a facade of strength, while the reality chokes them tighter, like weeds around a dying tree. The shadows lengthen once more, a subtle reminder of approaching danger. No longer are they warriors charging forth, filled with hope. They are weary souls, stumbling deeper into the clutches of an unforgiving land. The desert has a way of devouring dreams, leaving only bones in her wake. And as darkness falls, so too does despair. They are trapped, caught in the bedlam of their own choices. How did they come to this juncture? Their path is not merely a route through a desert. It is a descent into an abyss of uncertainty, a decision that may cost them everything. The flickering firelight dances over their gaunt faces, illuminating a grim resolve. Questions loom heavily. Will they remain lost? Will they confront their choices, or will Death Valley swallow them whole? As the cold bites harder and sleep eludes them, each man wrestles not just with the desert's wrath, but with the chilling weight of his own survival. The future is uncertain. Each heartbeat mingles with the howling winds outside, a reminder of the fragile line between life and death. The path ahead darkens beyond the flickering light, engulfing them in chaos. And as they close their eyes, hoping for dawn, they can't escape the lurking dread that perhaps no hope exists in this endless sea of sand and despair. Will they find salvation, or is the desert's rage finally upon them? With uncertainty hanging heavy in the air, the true test of human will begins. Chapter 3. The Unforgiving Landscape. The sun hangs like an orb of molten steel, glaring down on the parched earth. It is only mid-morning, yet the temperature climbs past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust devils twist and dance across the cracked, dry landscape of Death Valley, whispering tales of isolation and despair. The magic of the early morning light is now a distant memory. All that remains is blinding brightness and the oppressive weight of heat. The 49 gold seekers, weary from days of relentless travel, push onward, driven by a mix of hope and desperation. Their camaraderie, forged in earlier trials, flickers like a dying ember. Laughter has faded. Each step leaves imprints in the dust, symbols of their slow descent into hardship. They exchange glances, their eyes reflecting a haunting weariness. The horizon wavers in the heat, distorting reality, blurring distance and dreams. Even the most hardened of the men feels the drain. The once bountiful spirit of adventure sinks beneath the surface of dehydration. Their throats are parched, cracking with every word spoken. Words come out as hoarse whispers. Water is an echo, a ghost they chase in the empty stretches of arid soil. Each canteen, fading, dwindling, is a heartbreaking reminder of scarcity. As the days turn into an unbroken sequence of torment, temperatures soar, sweat pours from their bodies, instantly evaporating in the dry air. The men limp along, their skin glistening, a salty shell crystallizing in the sunlight. They can feel the sun searing their backs, boiling the very essence of their determination. Each footfall feels heavier than the last. The landscape is a vast prison. Stone outcroppings loom like silent sentinels, casting shadows that provide little respite. The rocks, painted with hues of ochre and rust, seem to laugh at their plight. The men gaze up at the unforgiving cliffs, the jagged peaks standing resolutely against the blue, a reminder of how small they are against nature's vast canvas. Some look to the mountains, wondering if they might find respite there. But the way forward leads deeper into the valley, ever onward into the depths of this brutal landscape. Conversations become pragmatic, almost procedural. Where to find water next? Which route to take? The enthusiasm of charting new territory has sputtered. Questions now carry an air of desperation. A few have begun to dig into the dirt, hoping to unearth moisture. The futility of it beats them, kneeling beside parched ground. Bones of ancient creatures break upon their spades. Remnants of life long extinguished lie just beneath their fingers. The nights bring little relief. Temperatures drop, but the recovery is deceptive. The chilling air bites, leaving men shivering under thin blankets. They huddle close, sharing body heat while the howls of distant coyotes remind them of their isolation. Hunger gnaws at their insides like a wild animal. The rumble of an empty stomach is matched only by the sound of the wind slipping through. The canyons, an unwelcoming serenade in the heart of the valley. Their dreams, once filled with visions of gold, glimmering riches, and promises of home, take dark turns. They awaken startled, drenched in sweat. A fleeting spectre of their idealism now haunts them, the promise of prosperity traded for relentless struggle and dwindling hope. To crumble under despair feels imminent, and yet the thought of turning back is unbearable. As the days stretch on, depletion settles in, not just the body, but the mind. Desperate thoughts creep in, their families, their homes, their futures. Paranoia infiltrates conversations. Is that a mirage on the horizon, or simply madness blooming under the weight of the sun? Voices become strained. Arguments flare over trivial decisions. Who is to blame for the lost trail? Who should have checked the supplies more carefully? On the edge of a cliff, one man, a grizzled frontiersman named William, gazes down into a valley below. He feels the familiar weight of his weapon tucked against his hip. It had given him security in the face of danger. Now, it feels like a yoke around his neck. He peels his sight away, and instead, he stares out at the endless expanse. In the distance, the serrated ridges seem to mock him, eternally out of reach. As night descends upon the valley, a silence falls heavier than the darkness. The stars jostle for attention, pinpricks of cold light scattered against the infinite backdrop of black. But the men do not find solace in their beauty. They simply feel small and diminished beneath their immense glow. In this moment of introspection, a deep question unfurls within William. What if they never reach the promised land? His realization clings to the air. It is as palpable as the dust settling on their shoulders. The desire to push forward clashes violently with the acknowledgement of their plight. The sun rises again, bringing with it a cruel reminder of their unending journey. They are prisoners of the unforgiving landscape. As it pushes them toward the brink, how much longer can they endure? And with that haunting thought, they lift their feet once more, located at the precipice of desperation. Will this journey break them, or will they find a way to navigate the confines of their fading hopes? Chapter 4. A Bitter Turn of Fate. The sun blazes overhead, relentless and unforgiving. In this vast expanse of Death Valley, the thermometer reads well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust swirls in the hot air, veiling the serrated edges of distant mountains. The burned earth stretches endlessly, cracked and creviced, each crevice holding the promise of water that never comes. Survival becomes urgent. The party of 40-plus souls, the so-called 49ers, presses on. their feet kicking up the gritty soil with every weary step. Thin lips crack further under the blistering sun, and parched throats plead for even a drop of solace. Just days ago they spoke of glory and fortune. Now those lofty ambitions have turned to whispers of despair. Among the ranks, William Manley stands tall, his gaze a stubborn defiance against the encroaching hopelessness. He felt the burden of leadership weigh heavily on his shoulders. Glenn Rogers, his closest ally, moves beside him. Rogers tries to inspire resolve, but his voice falters, choked by the dust. Manley scans the faces of the men, the gaunt stares, the drooped shoulders, the silent calculations of survival that flicker in their eyes. Water. If they could just find water. Each well-deserved pause morphs into a gamble. Will they rest and risk losing precious distance? Or will they push on, risking the last vestiges of strength among the weary? Manley's heart races as he sees the growing agitation among the group. Each man's quiet suffering breeds tension. The desert's brutality strips away civility, replacing camaraderie with suspicion and fear. The first argument erupts without warning. A man shoves another, their sunburned skin glistening with sweat. Voices rise over the sound of sand scraping against fabric. Roger steps in, his voice a strained attempt at calm. He implores them to remember their aim: safety, prosperity, home. Instead, they remember thirst, the way it gnaws at their insides. How the tongue feels like leather, the body weak and trembling under the punishing sun. They whisper of water, questioning if it is even out there, just beyond the next rise. As fatigue pulls at their bones, the slow march continues into the deeper canyons of the valley. Jagged cliffs loom overhead, casting long shadows that only draw darker thoughts. Each footfall sends a shudder through the earth, a reminder of their utter isolation. The desert becomes an enemy, pressing against them from all sides. With every hour, another declaration emerges. I can't go on. I'll find water alone. Some stagger away from the group, hope dwindling with each step. The sickening sound of despair is a whisper amongst them. They lose not just another man, but faith. Manley struggles to maintain control. Wait, we must stay together, he shouts into the enveloping silence. But his voice seems to dissipate into the thick, dry air. Each man musters his own will to fight the unforgiving wilderness, but even the strongest minds bend under such oppressive conditions. Their rations dwindle. The hardtack, once ample, has become their sole companion in hunger. It breaks apart, crumbling under the faintest pressure. Each bite is a dull reminder of their dwindling supplies, as they chew on memories of feasts long past and fresh bread. The hunger gnaws within, mirroring the thirst that settles in their throats. Nightfall brings an eerie reprieve from the day's heat. The temperature plunges, leaving them shivering as they huddle around a small campfire. Shadows flicker against the canyon walls, elongating, twisting into grotesque figures, the embodiments of their fears. The men sit, pale and drawn, eyes dull from sleepless nights and unrelenting anxiety. Each turn of the night brings fresh doubts, new fears. One man, weak and trembling, speaks of surrendering to death, claiming it as a noble escape from the horrors of thirst. Others stare into the flames, their faces shadowed, haunted by the looming spectre of starvation enveloping them. Their minds begin to fracture under the strain, and the fabric of organization begins to rip. Through the darkness, glimmers of once hopeful dreams bubble to the surface, gold, land, an end to their wandering. But those dreams unravel, consumed by the relentless desert. As dawn breaks, it reveals hollow eyes and frailties wrought by the desert's assault. Wandering off from the camp, they notice tracks in the sand, perhaps from a previous traveler. Hope flares momentarily, only to die as they realize the footprints lead nowhere. The morning air feels heavy with silence. Men shuffle, exchanging desperate glances, longing for a sign, a point of fortune amid the dry landscape. Each effort to move on becomes a burden. Their instinct to survive pulls against the slow decay of morale. Amid this, Manley and Rogers hold fast to a semblance of order. They assign duties. They map out a path, desperate to breathe renewed life into the fading spirit of the party. But as they press deeper into the valley, the encroaching heat envelops them once more, and with it, the quiet rumbling of panic mounts. They find a depression in the earth where once perhaps a stream had flowed. Hope flickers and rises as they scrape at the dirt, fingers clawing for the promise of moisture. But only dust and despair meet their hands. Rogers stands back, frustration painting his features. "This is madness," he exclaims, voicing what so many are beginning to feel. "We are fools to believe we find anything here." Manley, too, feels it now, the crushing weight of isolation, the unmistakable scent of desperation, wafting through the air. They exchange a look, a mutual understanding of the abyss that threatens to swallow them whole. Their voices fade, replaced by a haunting emptiness. Each step forward feels like an assault against the hopelessness enveloping them. Hours ebb away, the sun blaring down with remorseless fury, every heartbeat a reminder of their frailty. As the sun sinks low in the sky, another figure strays, this time a stout man named Jesse. He refuses to eat, willfully choosing to separate himself from the group. "I won't face this anymore," he mutters to no one in particular. The desert has claimed his will. Fear washes over Manley and Rogers in waves. His heart races. In the isolation lies true danger. The party cannot splinter. They cannot allow despair to lead to death. Desperation pumps through their veins. As shadows stretch across the earth, they gather what remains of their unity. But those thin threads feel more frayed than ever. The only kindness in their dire reality is the simple truth. The desert does not care about their quarrels or hopes. With the first stars pricking the ink-black sky, the true gravity of their situation dawns upon them. Supplies are exhausted, men are faltering, and resolution hangs by a thread. Somewhere in this god-forsaken valley, the horizon holds a bitter truth. Where will they find the strength to carry on? Can anyone emerge from this darkness unscathed? As the night deepens, an unsettling thought lurks in the corners of their minds. What sacrifices will become necessary for the faint hope of survival? Chapter 5. Desperation. Sets. In the sun hangs high in a relentless blue sky, pouring down its unforgiving heat upon the rolling sands of Death Valley. The temperature reaches unbearable levels, scorching the air. Dust swirls at their feet, clinging to their clothes, coating their parched lips, which crack and bleed with every attempt to wet them. The water skins, once full, now seem like empty shells, their presence a cruel reminder of their dwindling supplies. James Manley and William Rogers lead the small group, their faces a portrait of thinly stretched skin, stretched taut over bone. Sweaty brows glisten in the harsh sunlight, yet the sweat does little to bring relief, as it evaporates almost instantly, offering only an illusion of coolness. They trudge forward, hearts heavy with the weight of thirst. Despite the scorching path stretching ahead, they push deeper into the barren expanse. "Just a bit further," Rogers says, though his voice lacks conviction. He scans the horizon, searching for signs of life. In the dry undulations of this deathly landscape, not even the faintest silhouette of a distant hill offers solace. Each step is an exercise in survival, yet every footfall sounds like a death knell in this desolate wilderness. The air thickens with a palpable sense of despair. The group, now whittled down to a dozen weary souls, resemble a procession of lost spirits. The eldest among them, a man named Clay, stumbles, his knees buckling under the weight of exhaustion. Manley reaches out to steady him, but there's little more to be done. The shimmering heat waves distort their surroundings, playing cruel tricks as they split their focus between keeping the hopeful flame of survival alight and confronting the grim reality of their diminishing rations. In the distance, a mirage swirls, a tantalizing oasis of green that fades the closer they approach. It feels like a taunt from nature, a mockery of their desperate hopes. They know it's not real, yet the promise of water flickers in their minds. Each time they reach for that distant promise, their disillusionment gnaws at them, adding to the weight of their collective burden. Hunger gnaws at their bellies. A cruel companion, it whispers from the hollow pits where sustenance once resided. The thought of food haunts Manly and Rogers, visions of rich, hearty meals, now reduced to mere ghostly images in their minds. Green, the youngest in the crew, clutches his stomach, his eyes glazed with the unfocused stare of starvation. "It's only been 2 days since the last cache, surely," Rogers mumbles, trailing off into silence. Doubts crawl into their minds like pit vipers, sinking their fangs into the most vulnerable parts of hope. The unyielding sun beats down relentlessly, and the silence of the desert presses in, amplifying their fears. As night begins to creep across the horizon, the shadows grow longer, swallowing the last rays of daylight. The sudden transition releases a chill in the air, which offers only a momentary reprieve from the sweltering heat of the day. They huddle beneath a cluster of parched shrubs, each man too weary to contemplate the night ahead. The absence of sounds becomes disquieting. The desert's usual nocturnal symphony remains mute. The silence feels heavy, almost accusatory. It echoes their desperation. A coyote howls in the distance, its mournful cry piercing through the air, stirring the deepest fears of abandonment and hopelessness nestled in each man's chest. They remember the fragments of stories, tales of others who wandered into this deadly terrain and vanished without a trace. "We need to ration our supplies," Manly finally asserts, surveying the few remaining morsels they have left. A handful of nuts, a smattering of dried meat. Each piece feels sacred now, a binary choice between survival and starvation. Moments of sharing become frantic negotiations of their diminishing humanity. "We can last a little, longer if we—" His voice fades. His own resolve falters, undone by the weight of dwindling options. Rogers stares into the abyss of night, eyes scanning the starlit ceiling above them. Though beautiful, the stars offer no comfort, only reminding him how far they have strayed from home. "How long can we hold out?" he wonders aloud. The question sits heavy, shifting the air, amplifying their shared dread. Faces pale, revealing stark features carved from sunburned skin, stretched over sunken cheeks. They listen, but no answers come from the cool desert winds, only the silent expanse that cloaks them in darkness. Manly clutches an empty water skin, squeezing it tightly in a futile gesture. The collapse of any sense of time gnaws at their sanity. Night fully envelops them, chilling the air, yearning for warmth against the numbing cold creeping into their bones. They huddle closer, sharing body heat, yet salvation feels distant. Whispers of encouragement float through the group, a promise of tomorrow, an illusion of safety. Yet inside, they know the brutal truth. Each breath becomes a struggle. Rogers stares into the stars, wondering if any soul out there looks back at them, recognizing their plight. He suddenly contemplates what lies ahead. Could they chance another day, another step, or are they doomed to stumble blindly into the unforgiving desert, stripped of hope, stripped of life? In the shadows, Green shifts, the insistent rumbles of his stomach audible in the quiet. The men flick glances at one another, a tacit understanding of their despair brewing like a storm at sea. With each low rumble of his belly, it dawns on them. The line between survival and surrender is razor thin. Who, among them, would be the first to cross that line? The desert offers no answers, only stillness, only the harsh reality of their own frailty. Will they lean into the darkness or fight against its suffocating embrace? As the chilling night deepens, their thoughts spiral inward, teetering on the precipice of a choice they may have to face too soon. But a new day will come. Will it bring salvation, or will it shatter the fragile thread of hope that binds them? The dawn does not promise anything. The world feels poised on the edge of something unthinkable, an abyss waiting to swallow them whole. How long can they endure the slow devastation of hunger and the parched, merciless embrace of this desert? What will they be willing to sacrifice in order to survive? The silence knows. The winds whisper. There's a reckoning approaching, and this time it may not be with nature itself. Chapter 6. Cold Encroaches. The sun sinks below the jagged skyline of the Panamint Mountains, casting elongated shadows across the dry expanse of Death Valley. The temperature, once a punishing furnace, plummets as twilight descends, transforming the landscape from sun-baked misery to a chilling desolation. Night envelops the camp like a suffocating shroud, and with it comes the bone-numbing cold. William Lewis Manley huddles close to the dwindling fire, the flames licking greedily at the last of the wood. He can feel the heat beginning to slip away, the light dimming into an almost oppressive darkness. A crust of frost forms on the edges of his weathered coat, a cruel reminder of the drastic shifts that plague their days and nights. He can hardly remember what it felt like to be warm. The air is sharp, biting. Every breath feels like inhaling shards of ice. The skin on his hands cracks, and the wind carries a cold whistle, echoing through the pitiless valley. His mind wanders. He thinks of the Sierra Nevada, once a beacon of hope, now merely a distant dream. The thrill of adventure is long gone, replaced by a gnawing, desperate thirst. Dehydration gnaws at his stomach, making every moment feel like an eternity. John Rogers sits beside him, his skin pale against the darkening shadows. Rogers rubs his arms, trying to generate warmth, but it feels futile. The biting winds cut through him, the biting cold penetrating his bones. His thoughts drift, consumed by the reality they face. He wonders if the others have also succumbed to the desolation. As the stars prick the sky like icy daggers, the vastness of the valley becomes suffocating. Each twinkling light feels a world away as they sit in a hollow of despair. The desert, with its grand expanses, has become a tomb rather than a passage. A single coyote howls in the distance, a haunting lullaby for the lost. Manley glances at Rogers, the small fire casting flickering shadows across his face. They share a silent understanding, a bond forged in the crucible of hardship. The meager rations they have left seem to dissipate with every fleeting hour. Food is a fading memory, replaced by the bitter taste of dust and despair. Each squinting glare towards the now blanketed horizon is laced with anxiety. Supplies are diminishing daily, water most critically of all. Manley can even hear the dull thud of his own heartbeat in this lonely expanse. Each thump reminds him of a survival's fragility. The night's chill sinks deeper. Manley wraps his coat tighter around him, seeking even a semblance of warmth. He closes his eyes briefly, picturing flowing streams and abundant grasses. In his dreams, the water is cold and refreshing. Daylight refracts beautifully across its surface. He knows it exists, somewhere. Silence envelops the camp. Only the crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of dry brush break the calm, but even these sounds feel muted, as if the cold has swallowed them too. He can sense the shadow of hunger creeping up on them, gnashing its teeth like a wolf in the dark. Rogers, too, feels the gnawing in his gut, the relentless wrestle for survival. Their bodies become a testament to the perils of the valley, a slow withering under the weight of despair. Rogers watches the fire, noting how the light flickers with every gust of wind, illuminating their features, hollowed cheeks, sunken eyes filled with dread. He knows that warmth is fleeting. Every scrap of wood they burn could delay the inevitable, yet the reality outside their small circle of light grows increasingly threatening. Their thoughts dwell on the others, the remaining members of the ill-fated party, the men who had depended on them. In the days preceding this night, they had become separated during their relentless trek through sand and sun. Now, Manley and Rogers wonder about their fates. Have they succumbed to the thirst as well, turned on one another for scraps? As they sit in the dark, the silence becomes oppressive. It's laced with the stench of desperation and the bitter taste of impending grief. Manley's eyes scan the night, searching for answers in the darkness. "Tomorrow," he finally says, voice barely more than a whisper. "We have to move. We can't stay here." Rogers nods, knowing the weight of the words. They will rise, before dawn's pale light, and push northward, toward the mountains, toward hope, though it feels more like an insurmountable abyss. The thought of leaving the fire behind fills him with dread. In its warmth lies their only safety against the encroaching cold. As the night deepens, an eerie stillness blankets the valley. The rising winds send a shiver through the camp, pulling at the fraying edges of their resolve. Frost creeps across the ground like a silent predator, and it feels as if the desert itself is attempting to consume them whole. They stay close to the fire, sharing a fragile ember of light in a vast, inhospitable wilderness. The darkness stretches, palpable and forbidding. Manly glances toward the distant mountains, their peaks obscured, perhaps forever hidden by the shadows of uncertainty. Midnight approaches, bringing not only the stillness of the desert, but the whispers of unnerving thoughts. How far will they have to walk? How long can they endure this? Relentless siege of the elements. The fire crackles, sending a few embers spiraling upward into the abyss above. An ill omen. A sharp gust extinguishes their flame, plunging them into utter darkness. They blink against the sudden blackness, hearts quickening as they feel the enormity of the desert closing in. The cold is no longer merely a sensation. It presses against their backs like an invisible weight. Rogers reaches out, searching for the remnants of warmth, but all he feels is the bitter chill of the night air. The stars above are indifferent, twinkling with a detachment that mocks their plight. In that moment of silence, the question lingers, heavy between them. Can they survive one more night in this merciless land? The cold continues to encroach, tightening its grip. In the stillness, the valley is alive with the potential for despair. What will dawn bring? Will it be salvation or something far worse? The night stifles hope, and the shadows whisper darkly, ready to consume them whole. Chapter 7. The Cost of Survival. The sun hangs mercilessly above Death Valley. Its radiant face offers no comfort. Instead, it scorches the earth, turning the ground into unyielding baked clay. Temperatures soar beyond 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Each breath feels labored, as if the very air conspires against them. Parched lips crack, the skin chafes, and tongues swell in their mouths, a brutal testament to the relentless thirst clawing at the men. John Rogers kneels beside a stone, a fragile oasis in a sea of desolation. He inspects the dirt, hoping for any sign of moisture. The sun casts sharp shadows, but there is no humor in this landscape, no irony. He digs with trembling hands, the grit of the sand sinking into his palms, yet offering no reprieve. Just hours ago, one of the younger men from the party had collapsed, his body wrenching in silent surrender, collapsing into the dust. It was a slow, agonizing dance of despair. "Where's the water?" Rogers mutters, his voice thick, full of gravel. His throat burns with the need for something, anything, other than this choking air. Manly stands at the edge of the encampment. His eyes scan the horizon, searching for a mirage of salvation. He hears nothing but the hissing wind, a sound so haunting it feels alive, wrapping around him like a serpent. Every reminder of their bleak situation gnaws at his mind. The shadows of his companions grow thin and frail. Days meld into an unrecognizable haze. They measure time not by sunrises or sunsets, but by the agonizing march of hunger and the gut-wrenching sound of vomit hitting the gritty earth. The men become less of themselves with each passing hour. One of the crew, an elder named James W. McCarty, stumbles just beyond where the fire had been. His once strong frame is now bent, drawn tight over ribs that threaten to pierce the skin. "Just give me a bit of water," he rasps, a desperate plea laced with a bitterness that echoes under the unforgiving sun. They have no water. The canteens are just heavy metal containers, reminders of promises unfulfilled. Each man looks to the next, faces hollow and sunken. Who will be next to drop into the parched embrace of Death Valley? As the day looms on, they gather their remaining strength to move once more. The desperation entwines with a sense of hopelessness, lingering like the dust that permeates everything. Not one of them speaks of the possibility of leaving anyone behind, yet it hangs in the air heavier than the oppressive heat. Rogers and Manley press harder, trudging through the cracked earth that seems to shift and sigh beneath their boots. The ground feels almost sentient, and they are but unwelcome intruders. It swallows their footfalls with insidious intent, pulling them deeper into its parched grasp. The sun descends, casting an eerie glow over the valley. Shadows stretch and elongate. Shapes twist on the horizon like the illusions of promises lost. McCarty falls again, this time with a thud that reverberates in their minds more than it does on the earth. The sound is final. He lies motionless, face aglow in the dying light, breathing shallowly. Each breath draws in more dust than air. The others gather close. Their weary eyes look upon him, mingling grief with a morbid sense of reality. Will they carry him? Rogers glances at Manley, both of them thinking the unthinkable. What fate awaits the ones who cannot continue? Later, when the sun sinks below the skyline, it brings a shroud of darkness that settles over the valley like a consuming fog. Night creeps in with chill fingers. The contrasting cold seizes the remnants of warmth from their exhausted bodies. They huddle together around a small fire, fighting the violent shifts between sweltering heat and bone-chilling cold. As the minutes stretch into eternity, McCarty gasps a final breath, a rattling sound that dissolves into the eerie silence. The men sit frozen, puddles of despair pooling around them. With no word spoken, the collective awareness dawns. He has succumbed. Waves of anguish sweep through them, a visceral punch that resonates in their guts. This is the price of survival, loss upon loss. Manley stares into the embers, those flickering sparks of life illuminating faces, grown dark with a mixture of shame and despair. What will they do? With the fire dwindling, they find themselves staring into the abyss of star-studded skies. Each star gleams with indifferent beauty, far removed from the hell of Death Valley. Separated by the vastness of this barren landscape, each man feels alien in his grief, his struggle. Around the low flames, whispers begin to emerge, contemplating their next move. A suggestion to go deeper into the valley for water lands like a stone in the pit of their stomachs. It signals danger. The idea lingers, tempting yet perilous. They know the valley hides its secrets well, but what choice remains? Each night spent under this relentless sky brings a chill that seeps into their bones, pushing them closer to madness. The weight of survival bends them beneath an unbearable burden. They exchange fleeting glances, perhaps searching for hope, yet seeing only the shadows of despair reflected back. "I'll go with you," Rogers finally says, the words heavy with resignation. He stares into the flickering flames. Will it change anything? Deep down, he knows. This expedition will exact a toll greater than any of them imagined. The fire dims into a mere glow. Silence falls as they grapple with the knowledge that tomorrow may not bring salvation, but rather further loss, more sacrifice. Each breath feels like a choice, a gamble against the inevitability of nature's harsh grip. Once prideful men, now reduced to shadows of themselves. Each man carries within him the knowledge that they could be next, hunting for water, only to face the yawning maw of Death Valley itself. And as night descends fully, there is one lingering thought. If survival demands such a cost, how much are they willing to pay? The darkness thickens, laden with unspoken farewells, and the weight of decisions yet to come. Will they venture forth into the heart of the valley, knowing what lies ahead? Or will they linger here, tethered by fear yet grounded by the weight of loss? The air hangs heavy with questions, each unanswered inquiry echoing against the barren cliffs, stark and relentless. In this deadly expanse, change is inevitable, and the landscape remains unforgiving, waiting for them to make the next move. Chapter 8. A Last Bid for Hope. The sun hangs ominously in the sky, a merciless orb of heat pounding down on the parched earth. The terrain stretches endlessly, vast and brown, a seemingly infinite expanse of hardship. Dust swirls in thin currents, curling around the last remnants of humanity that clings desperately to survival amidst the unforgiving landscape of death. Valley. For weeks, the remaining pioneers have watched their numbers dwindle. Some lie motionless, hollow eyes staring into the blank void of desperation. Others wander aimlessly, plagued by delirium. Each passing hour deepens the suffocating weight of despair. Water has become an unbearable memory. Food, a cruel jest of the past. Among them, William Manley stands. His skin, once sun-kissed, now appears taut and cracked, each breath a laborious effort. He scans the horizon, seeking any sign of relief. Thin tendrils of mirage ripple away in the distance, teasing the hungry and desperate. He knows stagnation means death. For Manley, this realization slices deeper than any knife. They must move. But where? The mountains, he murmurs, voice strained against the grit that clogs his throat. The crevices of his mind swirl with visions of snow-capped peaks, of cool, clear water flowing from unseen springs. A dream that beckons him, and perhaps the others, forward. But they must first traverse a labyrinth of desolation. Beside him, William Rogers listens intently, his brow furrowed. Like Manley, he feels the weight of each passing moment. He knows the dangers that await them, the possibility of greater suffering. But an ember of hope flickers against the darkness of their situation. There is nothing left here, he agrees after a long silence. The decision, once made, hangs heavily in the scorching air. The men gathered, some gaunt shadows of their former selves, stare back with hollow expressions. Will they follow? Can they summon the strength to step beyond the mirage, beyond familiar suffering to grasp at the faint promise of salvation? As the sun dips low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretch like skeletal fingers across the ground, the men gather their meager belongings. The sun bleeds from the sky, shifting to hues of crimson and burnt amber. It is a fierce reminder of the harshness of their journey. With preparations complete, they begin to trek toward the mountains. Each step sends shards of pain through their weary bodies. The soil crunches beneath their feet, a gritty reminder of the arid land that has swallowed so many dreams. They move in a formation, a hesitant line of skeletal figures crossing the sunset-touched landscape. Manley leads the way, his senses heightened. The wind bites as it whistles past him, carrying both the scent of decay and the promise of something new. Every now and then, he turns back to check on the crew. Their faces are sunscreen-burnt masks of fatigue, teetering on the edge of collapse. He swallows hard. "Stay close," he calls, though the sound is swallowed by the desert wind. The urgency of their task is relentless. Daylight slips away, and they have no choice but to push on through the choking darkness that threatens to engulf them. Panic flares when one of the men trips over a rock, stumbling into the gravel. The sound echoes, curdling the silence around them. The crew stops, mirroring the collective dread that thrums in the stillness. Just as quickly, however, they collectively shake off the faint veil of fear. Hours dragged into days. Each second spent in the valley had been a poignant reminder of mortality. They move forward, reluctantly embraced by nightfall's smothering cloak. Manley's heart races. The night brings its own perils, unseen dangers lurking just beyond their vision. Jackals, perhaps, or anything else that may find their weakened state appealing. The darkness hangs thick, feeling more alive than ever, brushing against their frayed nerves. Yet even in their exhaustion, the mountains beckon, mere silhouettes against the night sky. They fill their minds with thoughts of water and fruit, of lush shade. They hold on to the glimmering image, forging it into a bulwark against the fears clawing at their insides. Forward, persevere. The sand shifts underfoot, each grain a whisper of despair telling them to turn back. It's maddening, the weight of the desert pressing down, yet they cannot relent. As dawn begins to pale the indigo sky, the harsh clamour of their surroundings emerges. A low groan of wind dances through the encampment of their weary souls. As the first light breaks, it casts haunting silhouettes across the valley floor. The sun creeps over the mountain tops. Manly's heart sinks a little further as the heat swells again, invading their senses. The breeze offers little relief, taunting instead with sporadic gusts of warmth that resemble fate wrapping its fingers around them. "I can't go on," one man wheezes, collapsing against the unforgiving soil. The cry disrupts the fragile thread of hope they've woven. Manly glances back, dread pooling in his stomach. "We have to keep moving," he urges with a steadiness he wishes he felt. But the man's conviction is splintered, another soul lost to the valley's wrath. The crew halts. Voices murmur anxiously, each man wrestling with the notion of the trek forward. Rogers sits down, head bowed. Fear seeps into the atmosphere like a venomous fog. "It's too far," someone whispers, eyes glazing over as despair creeps in. The notion of giving up is palpable. It presses against their chests with a weight that feels insurmountable. Will the mountain ever be reached, or is it a cruel illusion spinning before their eyes? The terrain around them shifts under scrutiny. The mountains loom larger now, opportunities masked by seeming impossibilities. They could see what had appeared so distant, just beyond the horizon, half-formed under the sun's weak embrace. Yet the path felt as distant as the last droplets of water. Another staggering reality sets in. With the haze of fatigue and despair heavy overhead, the chance for collapse looms. How can they push through when the very ground seems to swallow them, the environment itself turning against them? Manly grips his own resolve tightly as resignation begins to sprout among the crew. Disappointment coats their voices. Amongst this collective dread, he remembers the chilling tales of those lost in the wilderness. Stories told by fires in twilight moments, warnings woven into their very being. He stands tall. "We outlast the hardship. This is our time," he states, channeling an unseen strength. Yet beneath the surface, doubts swirl. Will they be the ones to survive? The voices of the fallen flicker in the corners of their minds. They can hear them, haunting whispers carried on the whispering wind. Time is slipping away. Hope hangs by a thread. As the sun begins its ascent, a shiver races through the group. What will become of them in this forsaken desert? What further torments await beyond the mountain's embrace? The question looms like a predator in the shadows. The next step remains unknown. Each forward motion feels like an act of defiance against their bleak fate. But with every new day, the mountains seem to rise, a challenging summit against their struggle, reflecting the harsh reality of survival. What awaits them at the end of this relentless trek? The answer hides shrouded in uncertainty, leaving an unsettling ache in the depths of their hearts. Chapter 9. Breaking Point. The sun settles high in the sky, bathing Death Valley in unyielding heat. The ground shimmers, waves of heat rising like spectral dancers. Footsteps crunch softly, yet hollowly, against the parched earth. Dust devils whirl, swirling their sinister fingers, pulling the weary travelers deeper into the relentless expanse of desolation. Survival hangs by a thread. There are still men among them, once sturdy and resolute, but now reduced to shadows of their former selves. Eyes sunken, skin blistered and cracked, lips festering from a lack of moisture. The taste of salt lingers in their mouths, an incessant reminder of dehydration's grip. Each breath draws the dry air deeper into their lungs, a parched gasp filled with despair. The remaining members of the caravan push onward. They stagger through the gloom of hopelessness, the heat striking like a vengeful spirit against their backs. Among them are William Johnson and his companion, James C. Reed. Both men share a silent acknowledgement of the grim landscape that surrounds them. Fissured ground that resembles a wicked crevasse of despair. Days merge into unbearable weeks, time bending, distorting under the strain of their endless trek. "Water," one man croaks, the word a dry leaf crumbling to dust in his throat. He stumbles, clutching his stomach, the echo of his plea hollow in the vastness. There is an unspoken understanding among them. They are not merely traversing land. They are entangled in a clench of survival against the environment's merciless grip. Each footfall is pulled by the weight of hopelessness. Their provisions dwindle. The last barrel of drinking water is little more than a cruel illusion, a mirage in the vast expanse of shimmering heat. The men eye one another, thoughts unspoken, but the shared desperation buzzes like 1,000 flies. Cans of rancid food offer no solace. Their contents feel more like punishment than sustenance. Sour smells mingle with the air. Stomachs churn in protest, the only sound the incessant shuffle of weary feet. Night falls, the temperature plummets, and the sudden chill bites through thin garments. The contrast is jarring, one moment suffocated by heat, the next shivering against the bitter cold. They gather close together, not for warmth, but for the fragile safety of proximity. Hope evaporates like the stars that twinkle overhead, so close yet utterly unattainable. Sleep surfaces as a scarcity, afflicted by jagged dreams of water and lush greenery. Men awaken gasping, the grip of reality more suffocating than the desert night. The dark corners of their minds claw at sanity, suggesting the unspeakable. Thoughts turn ugly. Ideas of desperation linger like poisonous smoke, wrapping around their consciousness. Their faces, now stark in the moonlight, echo an unsettling resignation. "Where is the end of this hell?" Reed mutters under the weight of his own fatigue. The questioning hangs in the air, thick as... The silence deepens. There are no simple answers, only the brutality of nature indifferent to their plight. Even the coyotes howl somewhere far away, their mournful calls just another reminder of the wilderness that surrounds them, alive and cruel. Another sunrise greets them, scorching the earth anew. With it, the heat returns, immense and suffocating. So too does the realization that some of their number have not risen, unmoving in the pallid glow of dawn. Faces taut with disbelief stare down, bodies lay still, spirits having succumbed to the insatiable thirst, now part of the unforgiving landscape they had sought to traverse. Despair festers. Those left living scatter in search of strength. Strength in water, strength in companionship, strength against the insurmountable odds. Yet the only sound is the rumble of distant thunder rolling across the valley, taunting them with the promise of rain that never comes. It's cruel, merciless, this empty heavens that seem to laugh in their faces. Morning turns to afternoon, the sun bearing down with a relentless fury. The last of their rations are resolved into bitter soup, each bite more revolting than the last. Questions flit through their minds like vultures anticipating decay. Have they strayed too far? Have they become fodder for the sands? Reed stumbles across a sliver of broken glass, a remnant of some bygone traveller. He picks it up, a cold piece of history amidst the horror, fingers tracing the sharp edges. It becomes a symbol of their failure, a glimmer of hope, now dulled by the suffocating weight of their situation. The men gather, eyes drawn to the object, some whispering prayers, while others feel the weight of despair thicken in their throats. Amidst this agony, John Rogers searches the horizon, desperate for some sign of salvation. "There must be something," he mutters, nearly pleading with the empty expanse. The landscape stretches before him, barren and cruel, an endless canvas of desolation painted in shades of brown and inhospitable heat. Yet somewhere out there, beyond the bounds of sight, they believe, maybe just out of sheer necessity, that salvation waits. Footsteps echo as they press onward, their bodies pushing against the remorseless chill of despair. The sun arcs cruelly across the sky, shadows shift, moving like phantoms, taunting at the edges of their vision. Water is their only thought, a mirage in every shifting landscape, every sun-baked stone. Their strength falters. They glance at one another, eyes glazed, filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. "We can't go on," a lower-class sailor croaks. His heart beats rapidly against a sunburned chest as he speaks what everyone else has been contemplating. "We won't make it." A fierce wind rises, swirling dust and sand, stinging their eyes like splinters. Amid this chaos, the possibility of hope emerges, conjuring the very atlas of their dreams. Reed breathes out, feeling anew. Resolve sparked from the ashes of despair, but it goes unacknowledged, swallowed by the wind. They march. Each step is combat against the whip of fate. Will they find refuge or collapse beneath the unyielding sun? The reality feels oppressive, an unbearable weight. Whatever sanity they cling to begins to fray, like the tattered rags of their clothing. When a distant silhouette appears on the horizon, indistinct, wavering, fingers point instinctively, mouths whisper soft prayers of resurgent hope. Water, will it be their salvation or another trick played by this merciless desert? Each heart races. Will they reach it before the breaking point consumes them? Questions swell like the oppressive heat, surrounding them with both dread and fragile hope. The land lies cold and indifferent, yet the promise of potential looms ahead. As they march onward, the answer lies in the shimmering void, waiting to reveal its dark truth. Have they come too far, lost into madness? Will they find what they seek, rising from the ashes of despair? Or will they succumb to the very terrain that seeks to swallow them whole? Chapter 10. Rescue at last. The sun hangs low, blazing on the horizon. Its relentless light turns Death Valley into an unforgiving furnace. The heat shimmers on the cracked earth, distorting the line between reality and mirage. There's no shelter, no shade, nothing but the relentless sun and a team of weary pioneers, exhausted but still alive. They call themselves the Relief Party. Just days before, they had set forth from the Sierra Nevada, driven by tales of others who had fallen into this arid abyss. Each step seems impossibly heavy, dragging through the dry sand. Calls of dwindling hope echo amongst them. Water supplies, rationed to the last drop, are depleted. The taste of salt lingers, crusted on their lips, as parched throats cry for relief. Caleb Rogers, with sunburnt skin cracking like the desert floor, leads the men. His eyes, though bloodshot from a fatigue, dart intently across the wasteland. They strain to catch sight of any remaining signs of life, any hint that they are not the last souls trudging through this mighty desolation. They remember the story of the previous expedition, Manley and his crew. The inexplicable tales of their bravery now ripple through Roger's thoughts, filling him with dread. What had become of them? The knowledge of their conflict with despair drives each labored step forward. It is nearing dusk when they find it, a decaying camp, now nothing more than scattered remnants of a once hopeful group. The campfire stones, now cold and indifferently scattered. Tattered pieces of canvas flutter in the evening breeze, whispering stories of desperation. A silence settles on the explorers. Was this the end? Rogers and the men fan out, moving cautiously, their senses heightened. The scent of decayed food mixes perversely with the essence of the very ground beneath them. Bellyaches gnaw at their insides, but the rescue's proximity cannot be ignored. They sift through the scattered debris, uncovering the remnants of the previous expedition. There, half buried in the sand, lies a tattered journal. Rogers, trembling with a mixture of excitement and despair, pries it open. The ink has faded, the pages stained with time, but the words, though smeared, tell a haunting tale. The last entries reveal the agonizing plight of Manley and his followers. Once men of resolve, now reduced to shadows flitting through the valley of death. Water, food, hope fading, Rogers reads aloud, pained. Their surroundings suddenly feel heavy with loss. Each word strikes like a knife, almost too much to bear. They can feel the ghostly presence of those who once camped here, whose dreams lie shattered in the grit. The heat of the day gives way to the cooling grip of night, but the stars offer no warmth here. Each flickering light above serves as a reminder of just how isolated they are. For a brief, moment, the desert felt like a living entity, wrapping around them with its harsh embrace. It watches, waiting for weakness, before devouring all that dare tread upon its surface. Rogers gathers his crew around him. They huddle in a tight circle, desperate for answers. "We need to keep looking," he insists, his voice hoarse but commanding. "We can't be the last ones. We have to find the others. They could still be alive." The men, overwhelmed by despair yet ignited by flickering hope, share wary glances and nod. They scour the perimeter, finding traces of earlier struggles: cracked leather boots, threadbare jackets, the remnants of a makeshift carry bag. The scraps of fabric seem to carry the essence of the men who wore them, a phantom echo of existence amidst the harsh reality of the surrounding void. A sudden gust of wind stirs the dust, swirling around them. It carries faint sounds, reminiscent of distant voices, pressing around them like an invisible chorus of the fallen. Rogers feels the weight of his own impending failure, battling against rising hopelessness. How many had once stood here, alive, vital, and now long gone? Hours drift, shrouded in silence, as they scavenge amidst conflicting feelings of desperation and determination. From the remains of the campfire, they manage to ignite a new flame. As the embers flicker into life, their shapes twist in the air, reflecting ghosts of the men who fell here. The first night passes slowly, punctuated by the haunting calls of distant creatures, coyotes perhaps, scavengers, or figments of imagination born of hunger. As morning hues filter the dark sky, Roger stands sentimental, staring into the ashes and remnants. Despair is a burden. It weighs them down, yet with each breath, an ember of hope glimmers stubbornly. And then, a sound, an echo. The unmistakable crack of twigs snapping, a soft voice carried by the wind, hauntingly familiar yet foreign. The men freeze, hearts pounding. This cannot be imagined. The weight of the moment hangs on a knife's edge, silence creeping in. Rogers motions for quiet, raising a finger to his lips. They strain their ears, and just like that, it comes again. A series of coughs, the desperate rasps of a throat parched for moisture. Another figure emerges. Not far, not close, a ghostly wisp of a human being. The dim light filters through the dust, catching glimpses of a figure, gaunt and hollowed. It is a man, stumbling towards them, sand and sweat caking his skin. His clothing, tattered, suggests he has walked through hell itself. Eyes wide with disbelief, the relief party rushes to him, an unsettling mix of fear and hope rising within. This can't be just a mirage, a trick of the unforgiving desert. Are you from the other group?" Rogers manages, his voice trembling with anxiety. The man sways on his feet, barely able to respond. We thought we'd never see another soul." His voice cracks, as if the very act of speaking strains his body past the limits of endurance. Behind him, the wild form of the desert shrouded in shadow. There could be more survivors. They must be close. But for every glimmering prospect, there lies deeper shadows. As the sun climbs higher, the grey light reveals more broken pieces of the man's story. The deterioration of spirit, the loss of hope. The desiccated valley holds tightly to its secrets. If one man survived beyond this point, what of the others? But then the looming question emerges. At what cost will their rescue come, and who might still be out here, waiting for an answer? Rogers feels a chill creeping down his spine. One step forward, and yet so much distance remains. The ancient earth beneath him feels alive with possibilities, but the air swirls thick with dread. They have crossed paths with survival, but what still awaits them in the desolate aftermath of despair? And as the sun sets, its glow dims. The world around them transforms into shadows once again. The idea of hope begins to wane, but so does the question. Who will make it through another day? Will this man join them, or does he bring news of greater loss? The desert watches, ever patient, as secrets murmur through its dry winds. An unsettling stillness hints at both clarity and catastrophe. In the shimmering expanse of Death Valley, Where hope meets desolation, the echoes of the lost pioneers resonate through the crevices of time. These men and women, driven by dreams of fortune and a new life, ventured into this unforgiving wasteland, only to become spectres in the unforgiving sands. Their desperate fight for survival amid blistering heat and suffocating dryness is etched into the very earth, a haunting reminder of ambition turned to ash. Surrounded by jagged peaks and endless horizons, they faced a landscape intent on devouring their resolve. Each step through the parched terrain carried the weight of their aspirations, visions that turned to dust beneath the relentless sun. The isolation was palpable. The cacophony of ambition dwindled to whispers of despair. Water became precious, a cruel mirage taunting them from afar. Dehydration gnawed at their bodies, transforming vibrant individuals into shadows, staggering under the burden of their hopes and fears. Their saga intertwines with the relentless heartbeat of the desert, the harsh lessons learned, the brutal reality of facing nature's indifference, loom over future generations. The legacy of these pioneers is not one of triumph. It is a stark testament to the risks taken in pursuit of dreams unmoored from reality. They left behind not just bones in the sand, but a cautionary tale etched in the folklore of migration, echoing the unyielding truths of human endurance amidst an environment that offers neither mercy nor reconciliation. The remnants of their struggle persist in the whispering winds that course through the valley, carrying tales of loss, courage, and the echoes of decisions made in desperation. As civilization continues to reach toward the horizon, the ghosts of those lost pioneers serve as guardians of history, reminding us that each ambitious journey might carry a price paid in sweat, sacrifice, and the chilling silence of the desert night. Their legacy disrupts the comforting narratives of exploration and prosperity, instead illuminating the darker aspects of human endeavor. It invites reflection upon the nature of ambition itself, questioning whether the pursuit of one's dreams is worth the potential for ruin. As we stand on this precipice of thought, caught between the allure of adventure and the cruelty of nature, one must ponder, how far are we willing to go, and at what cost? If this history has left its mark on you, leave a like. It tells me you survived the journey, guided through the shadows of the past. Drop a comment below. I want to know what part of this story haunted you most, which whisper echoes in your mind as the desert night envelops you. And as we turn the page into our next dark history, prepare to delve into the abyss of an untold saga, where the spirits of those lost to the icy grip of the Arctic beckon, reminding us that every exploration may conceal its own deadly fate.